Hi, I'm Greg Misicko, and this is my final project presentation on Apache Flume. So what is Apache Flume? It's defined as a distributed, reliable, available service for efficiently collecting, aggregating, and moving large amounts of log data. So what we've done in this class is taken big data and processed it one way or another. And we've used simple means to do that, like we've used put to send data into a Hadoop file system. But Flume is more advanced. It's an efficient and easy way of moving data from one point to another. So a basic diagram shows that you'll have information coming from somewhere, and you'll call this data coming in your source. And you're going to move this data through a channel into a destination, which is called a sink, and then you're going to end up doing something with it. So you have this source and this sink bound to a channel. This altogether is called an agent. And there are different types of sources, channels, and sinks. This isn't a complete list that I'm showing here, but depending on what your application is, you'll identify your source, your channel, and your sink to meet your needs. A very simple starting point, kind of your hello world example, would be using a netcat source, where you can, from a command line, just enter information. And then on the sink at the destination, you'd have a logger presenting whatever information is being dropped in there. The configuration for that would look exactly like this. You'd have an agent identified. You'd give it a name. I'm going to call this one Greg 1. You'd identify the source, the channel, and the sink. I'm just going to call these S1, C1, and K1. And then you need to define the type and some additional information. So for netcap, we've identified the source as being of type netcat. It's going to be running on localhost with port 12345. We'll just store the data in the channel in memory, very simple. And then on the destination side, in the sink, we'll use a logger, which is just going to print everything that it receives onto the console. So if we go over here, I have a virtual machine where I'm running all of this. I'll activate that Flume configuration that I just showed you. As soon as I find it. Yep. So this is the command that you're going to run, and the main thing to know here is you have to identify your configuration file, and then when you specify an agent name, this has to be associated with an agent that's defined in that configuration file. Just because you're setting an agent name here on the command line doesn't mean you can call it whatever you want. You're specifying which agent you're using from that config. So if I activate this, I'm in the wrong location. If I activate this, okay, it starts up. Flume is running. Netcat can send information into port 12345. So I'll do that over here. I've done this before. If you watch over in this window, after I enter something, the logger will present whatever falls into the sink. So I'll type in a test message, and you see right away over in the sink, the logger sink test message pops up. I can type another one, and it's going to pop up over here also. So it works, and this is a good way to verify that things are working. If you're setting up a real-world example, a good starting point is to set up your source first, and then set up a logger sink, so you can verify that the information is coming in and it looks like what you would expect it to look like. But what I'm going to do for a real-world example is I'm going to take Apache web server log files. I'm going to feed them onto a Kafka topic through Flume, and then process them with a Java consumer that's going to count the different types of response codes that are coming in, and then visualize those in a D3 page. So the source data from the weblogs, it has various bits of information. You know, there's IP address, date and time, and etc. It's the response codes that I'm interested in. You can see a 302 here. Here's a 200. You know, down here we have a 404 code. And these response codes from the web server identify what happened, basically. You know, they can tell you if it was a good response or a bad response, or if it was an informational response, you know, if somebody might have been testing or whatever. And we can count these up as they come through on our topics windows. You know, we have these time frames where we're getting this information. And when we present this all in the visualization, you can you know, see in a stacked bar graph what the activity looked like for that time frame. You know, was it mostly good, mostly bad, you know, whatever the case may be. So the Flume configuration for this, you know, like I mentioned earlier, you have different types of sources and sinks and channels. For our source, in this case, we're going to use a spooling directory, which is just simply a directory. There's, you know, nothing difficult about setting that up. You just make a directory, put it in your configuration, and then anything that falls into that directory is going to be sent to the sink through Flume. After it gets sent through the channel into the sink, that the file that landed in that directory is going to be marked as completed, and then it's finished at that point. If you know, if anything else happens to that file once it's completed, it doesn't matter. It's already been completed. The sink is going to be a Kafka sink, which just means that Flume is going to be sending that data onto a topic, and I'll have a Java consumer reading that information and doing something with it. So okay, this one, you know, the setup is going to be a bit more involved than what we had before. The configuration file shows quite a bit more going on. Okay, so we have the spool directory. Like I said, that part is simple. Now the Kafka topic that we have here, we have to identify what the topic's name is going to be, and etc., etc., all this other stuff. So not really too complicated, just as long as you know what it is you're setting up. So let's get this running. We'll turn up Zookeeper first. Next we'll start up Kafka. And then finally, once that comes up, let me, I think I said topic, we're going to be using topic 4, so we'll start that one up. Okay, so we have Spark topic 4. It's available, it's out there running. Now with Flume, we can run that configuration file. And I know it's in the history somewhere, so let me find it. Here we go. Okay. So we see a bunch of information going up, and now it should be working. So like I said, anything that falls into that spool directory now is going to pass along here into the Spark topic. And I have this Java consumer here. It's ready to go. It's going to be listening to that topic, picking up that information, and processing it. And before I run out, let me just confirm that everything's right. Okay, so here's my Java consumer. This is where I run this from. You know, I use Maven to package this up. It's in a jar file. We're gonna, you know, use Spark submit. Call the window log count, which was the name of my Java class there. We needed to be hitting the proper topic, or it's going to fail. Okay, so we'll run that. We'll see the information going through. Okay. And now, to drop a file, I mean, to keep it simple, what I'm doing over here is I just kind of keep copying the same log files or new ones. I'm just calling it something else. Let's put a log file in there, call it number 12. We hit it. Okay, so it got processed very quickly already. You can see, so number 12, it's now marked as completed, even though I just copied it in there. We saw activity up here when that happened too. And the Java consumer, of course, just keeps printing stuff like crazy, but it took that information and appended it to the the CSV data file that I'm using to visualize this data. So my visualization is actually running. I'm using the Python web server for simplicity. That displays the information in the CSV file where I have things categorized by the response code type. We have the 100s, 200s, up to 500s, where it's informational, successful, a redirection, a client error, server error. And with the latest update, now if I refresh this page, you saw that this just added May 15th, the next level of information that just popped in here, that comes up, and now we have the stacked bar graph showing us by time period what we saw in terms of those response codes. That's about all I had to show. Thank you very much.